Right, guys, what is up? Welcome to Breakfast with the Brand, the number one podcast in the world for entrepreneurs and leaders who want to go to the next level. I am your host, Junior Frederick, and I have with me, as usual, Mr. Bobby Stealth. And today we're going to be getting into a couple of concepts meant to help you develop an industry leading brand. If you are tuned in live, go ahead and put your flames in the chat. Let us know how you're feeling. Let us know what the energy is like on this phenomenal Friday morning. Bobby, how you doing?
Doing great, Junior. I'm doing great. As we talk about some of the things that we got on the agenda for today, I got a confession to make. I have a confession to make. I was feeding my daughter this morning, and I had like, "Am I a bad dad?" moment. Like, am I doing this right? What am I doing this right? Now it's something small, but we have like TVs and stuff all around our house, different cameras and all little things like that. So she can watch television while she eats. And I don't think that's a good thing. I don't think that's a good thing to like be watching TV while you're eating. And I only really do one meal a day, but that one meal a day I do it with my wife watching television because it's the only time that I really spend, so to speak, with her one on one. And that's what she likes to do. And it's something easy to do. And I'm just like, okay, I'll eat and I'll watch TV at the same time and talk to my wife, kill two birds with one stone. But I know that it's not the best thing to do. So the reason I open up with this confession is because it's a leadership thing. It's like before I can correct my daughter or say, no, you can't do that, she can't see dad do it. So I thought to myself, all right, room for improvement. Got to find a way to eat really quickly and then spend time with the wife and watch the television and know that's like my one meal a day. Up, didn't watch TV doing it today, but it is what it is. So I'm doing phenomenal this morning. I'm doing well. I'm thinking about life. I'm reflective. I'm looking at ways to be better.
Very nice. I had a similar thought the other day, but it was more around just devices in general, like phones and stuff like that. So my son was watching some cartoons on a phone, and I'm just saying to myself, like, is it really wise to have kids using devices at that age? I don't think it is, and I'm very I'm very particular about these devices. It's so funny, Bobby, because back when we were kids, we were using the devices, like we had video games and stuff like that. But now when we become the adults and the parents, we're like, I don't know about these video games. If you were like me back in the day, I wouldn't say I was obsessed with video games, but I definitely had a lot of video games.
Mhm.
But it's interesting, man, like how tables turn and how perspective shifts as you grow. And it's amazing because it's the same way with your brand. Like stuff you wouldn't normally do, you do. Even like putting out content, for example. Now, a lot of people that we work with, they live very like private lives. So they don't necessarily even want to be, on the internet, on camera, stuff like that. But then I heard somebody say the other day that, and everybody that's watching, I want you to consider this. Put it in the chat, put a number one in the chat if you would have loved to see what like your great grandfather was like back in his youth. Just put a number one. If you would have just loved to just, jump on a computer or jump on some device, television, whatever, and just see what he was doing. Like, what was he like? How did he move? What did he believe in? How did he speak? Like your great grandfather. That would have been amazing, right? So another aspect or another way of looking at content creation is thinking to yourself, in the next 20 years, 50 years, 60 years, 80 years, somebody who is your descendant is going to be able to put on some device. Maybe we'll have, the 3D goggles or whatever, and they'll be able to know what was my grandfather, my great grandfather, Bobby Jackson like? What was his energy like? What did he believe in? What did he do on a daily basis? How did he move? What did he, and I find that fascinating. I find that fascinating. So it's just a different perspective. But Bobby, I feel pretty much like you were very similar. This morning I started listening to The Richest Man in Babylon again. I started listening to that book again while I was, just doing my morning routine and picking up a lot of gems, a lot of gems. a lot of wisdom. So wisdom is the key. Everybody, wisdom is the key to get what you want in life.
Yeah, yeah, man. When we come back from the break, man, I think everybody's going to enjoy this. Everybody's going to enjoy this conversation because it's one that builds, it compounds. And as we break things down this morning, you're going to walk away with 4 steps to developing a unstoppable, impenetrable brand. Trust me. Trust me.
There's slow growth and then there's scale. There's incremental growth and then there's exponential growth. What I want to talk to you about is adding a 0 to you and experiencing exponential scale. Incremental growth says 1 plus 1 is 2. Exponential growth says 1 plus 0 is 10. Incremental growth says 2 plus 2 is 4. Exponential growth says 5 plus 0 is 50. Guys, listen, when you add a 0 to you, you can add a 0 to the marketplace. You can add a 0 to the value that you bring. So you can add a 0 to your family, add a 0 to your legacy. This is what we're talking about. We're not talking about incremental, we're talking about exponential. I always say that business is a spiritual game. Just imagine when you combine your skills, your values, your abilities, your talents to something bigger than you, something greater than you, something like the power of exponential. That is adding a 0. Add a 0 to your competence, add a 0 to your confidence. This is about adding a 0 in your life, your value, your industry, and your mission. Let's grow. In brand clarity, exactly what you're going to get is what it sounds like. Clarity for your brand. What is your color? What is your logo? What is your unique value proposition? Who are you speaking to? Why? How should you speak to them? How should I position myself? That's what you're going to learn in brand clarity. You need other people to have the same clarity on your brand that you do. But this is the gap. If you don't have clarity on your brand, then no one else is going to have clarity on your brand either. It's like messaging. Your message sounds clear to you, but is your end user receiving the value that you're trying to provide? I guarantee you that after you go through brand clarity, they will, and so will you. And that's how you'll scale your brand.
All right, guys, so we are back. Welcome to Breakfast with the Brand. It's about to get very, very interesting.
Yes.
Bobby, talk to me.
Man, so 4D framework, cat's out of the bag, guys. That's what we're going to be talking about. 4D framework. And if you haven't heard about the 4D framework before, it's something that Shaan has used for several years, and it's something that he taught me and many other individuals that's been under his tutelage. So the 4D framework is this: decide, discipline, develop, and dominate. So anytime you're building a brand, anytime you're building anything, a business, a family, a persona, you've got to decide what direction you're going in. What is it that you're actually doing? Why? Right? You got to decide. And then you've got to be disciplined. So once you make a decision and you've identified the things that you need to do in order to watch this decision develop, which is the third point. But once you say, okay, these are the things I need to do, you've got to be disciplined. All right. Disciplined to do it. And then the development piece is more about patience, time, letting it develop, being patient enough for it to develop and not jumping ship. And then lastly, domination. So once you've done these 3 things, then you can dominate, increase the prices, and you can increase prices as you do these things. But it's like it really makes you unstoppable in the marketplace. So those are some of the things that we're going to be unpacking today as me and Junior just have a very organic conversation. So I'll open it up with deciding for me was something that was hard for whatever reason. Like it was hard for me to decide, but it was probably because I had an indecisive nature. And many of you all may be like me. Like if you're creative, you're known to be a bit indecisive because we always want to create. Like we never want to stop creating. So to us, it's like I'm creating, I'm making something new. But to the marketplace and to the people trying to support us, it's like, will this person just make up their mind? will they just do one thing? Like, will they just stay where we can help them? And the prospect may say, will they just put out one message so I can make sure this is what I want? But to us as creatives, we're just like, that was cool last week, not anymore. That was cool last month. So deciding was tough for me. And one of the things that I had to do in order to improve my decision making when it came to my brand and just like being firm was I had to add little things that were hard to change. So for me, I said blue is my color, and I stuck with that. Like, it was small, but I said it's my color, and I stuck with it, and I decided on blue. Sometimes we try to decide on too much, and that was my mistake. Like, I tried to say this is who I am, what I'm doing, and how I'm going to be for the rest of my entire career, so on and so forth. And that was a mistake for me as a creative. So what I had to do was just choose one little thing. Blue, okay, tie, okay, blazer, okay, no facial hair. Little things, and I made those decisions and stuck with them. So how about you, Junior? How has deciding been for you? I know you're a bit different than me. I think you have a lot more, this is what I'm going to do, and this is how I'm going to do it kind of approach to things.
Yeah. For me, so okay, so I'm a very strategic person, but it's easy. Like, if you're a very strategic person, it's easy to get stuck in what you call paralysis by analysis. So I found it more useful to decide what I don't want rather than deciding what I want. Put it in the chat if I had to ask you the question of what do you want, you might stutter a little bit. You might take a little pause, and you might have to actually think, like, what do I actually want, and why do I want that? Clarity is something else. So put a one in the chat if that's you, but put a two in the chat if I ask you the question of, well, what don't you want? You'll be able to put that down right away. I think most people know what they don't want. Most people don't know what they want. And I feel like, Bobby, as you grow and as you gain more clarity, what you want actually changes.
Mhm.
I think what you want actually changes. But the important thing is to just start somewhere. I think for me, I've always had a nice balance of, hey, yeah, you have to be well thought out, but at the same time, you have to execute and you have to move. And you can never really and truly always make the right decision, but you can do everything you can in your power to make the decision that you eventually make right.
Mhm.
So the way I think about things is that I look at it and I say, well, okay, I have a decision to make, or all of us have decisions to make. Most of the times, we don't have all of the information necessary to make the right decision. And I think Joel spoke about this. Like, how do you make a decision to do something when you don't have all of the information? Like, I don't know everything involved. So, for example, how do you know? And I see another number twos coming in the chat. Check this out. So people are saying, I know what I don't want. So Bobby, if you don't have all the information, like, how do you know blue is going to work? You don't know that.
Nope.
How do you know red will work? How do you know gold will work? Like, you just don't know. You don't know all of the information, which is in marketing, our approach is like, we say marketing is a big word for testing. So even in simple things like the ideal client, for example, I tell clients that the ideal client profile they have is just a hypothesis. We don't know if it's real until we put it out there, until we test it, until we try to sell to that person and they buy. Then you know it's real. But
Mhm.
until that point, it's not real. So for me, I've always felt like, okay, you have to be strategic to some point, but I find it more useful to just have confidence in yourself, like Shaan said, and just rely on you. Because truth is, you don't have all the information to make the right decision. You may make a decision and it end up being right, but it's not because you had all the information. It's because you just took a chance. Okay, so I would say, when is good enough good enough? Like,
Mhm.
when is, like, if you know 70%, if you know 60%, that should be good enough for you to move, and you just take action on that. So that's what I do. Like, I just tell myself, I've thought about this two times, three times. This is good enough. and then I move, because truth is you don't know everything. You don't know what's going to happen next week. You don't know what's going to happen next month. You don't know if your idle client will change. You don't know if your market is going to disappear. You don't know what's going to happen. You don't know if there's going to be new technology coming out. So there's always a degree of uncertainty when you're a leader and when you're doing stuff. But I feel like you just have to be satisfied when you arrive at the point of good enough and just move.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's what's interesting about decision making. A lot of decisions in the early days, at least, are intuitive. They're intuitive decisions because you don't know and you can't know. You don't have enough data to logically analyze the situation. So, with that being said, I think action takers are money makers. Something I hear Junior say quite a bit is because when you take action, what you do is you position yourself to get real data. And my background is data analytics. I did data analytics for over 12 years in the Marine Corps. So moving into the disciplines.
Bobby, before you do that, let me just say something quickly.
Mm-hmm.
So in the book that I was listening today, it actually said something to what we were talking about. So it says I'm just paraphrasing it, but it says Lady Luck. So Lady Luck favors the man of action.
Yeah.
So Lady Luck favors the man of action. And in this case, of course, it could be a woman as well. Okay,
Yeah.
but that's what the book said, meaning that if you take action, if you're decisive, if you move, luck often favors you.
Mm-hmm.
So I wanted to put that in there.
Yeah, that's a really good one. It actually brings me to one of the examples that they used in the book, which was a man who had cattle. He was like selling all of his sheep. He had like 100 sheep, right? And he said, you could buy some of these sheep, and I'm paraphrasing as well. You could buy these sheep for like half off today, but they'll be double the price tomorrow. And a buyer comes by and says, hey, I'd love to get these sheep. I need some sheep. And he's like, yeah, I'll sell them to you right now, half price tonight. Let's go. And the man says, well, I need to go home and check my account and do some other things, and I'll come back in the morning. He says, well, if you come back in the morning, it'll be double the price, right? The guy comes back in the morning, and I think somebody bought the sheep last night or something, or somebody got the deal, and the guy missed the deal. So that was one of the examples from the book. And I know that from personal experience because like as a buyer, like somebody that's moving my business forward, and I'm always purchasing different things to help me do that. It's like the deal sometimes, like the best terms, the best deal is usually if you have cash on hand and can like take action that day. It's normally where some of the best deals lie in business. So I thought I might share that too. So discipline. Whew, discipline. This one I think is an Achilles heel for a lot of people. And it's not because we're not disciplined, but because discipline, it it's not hard, but it doesn't feel good. Like nobody likes to do the same thing every day over and over and over again. Like nobody likes to do that, but it's not hard. Nobody likes to do the things they don't want to do. And the things they don't want to do usually aren't hard. They just don't want to do them. And it's like you have all of these things that you just don't want to do or that may be difficult for you. And discipline says, do them anyway. Do them anyway. Wake up, you don't want to work out, do it anyway. Wake up, you don't want to work out 2-3 days in a row, keep working out. Oh, you want to eat this one food, but you took it out of your diet for the next 6 weeks. Well, don't eat it. That's discipline. And that I think is what gets a lot of people caught up. For me personally, when building my brand, I struggled to discipline myself to produce content regularly. So I want to say I tried everything, but that'd be an exaggeration. So I'm not a systems guy, right? So I will say I tried everything. And everything to me is I woke up early to post. I went late posting. I posted throughout the day. Like I tried everything within my scope of comfort, right? And that just didn't cut it. It didn't cut the mustard. And what I needed to do was find something that was more consistent. So for me, I had to find a person. because I personally just was not the guy. Like I tried and failed. It just was not for me. And one of the things that I noticed was planning. Planning helps with discipline. You got to be able to plan things out. And when you plan them out, discipline yourself to execute on them daily. So, to tie this back to my brand and some of the things that I had to do when I got more successful at discipline was going live and then having a topic when I went live and then going live and creating a series. So I had a topic, and now you're seeing the plan, guys, play out. Like at first I would just pop up, go live, and the timing would be inconsistent. But I said, okay, I need to set a topic because I've decided. My decision was I'm going to go live. And this is what you have to do in your business as well. Like if you're going to leverage this 4D framework, you have to decide. I said, I'm deciding to go live and I'm going to talk about finance. Then I had to discipline myself to talk about these topics on these days and go live at this time, rain, sleet, heck, or snow. So then I disciplined myself. And then as I was going through it, I had to overcome monotony and tedium. And as I did those things started to develop. But that's the third one. So I'm turning it over to Junior to see how he has helped people tackle the discipline piece, because he's been known to tell me, you're only going to be so disciplined. Systems saves you. Like systems is the way. So I'm interested to see what he has to say on the discipline side.
Yeah. On the discipline side, I've always now this is a great question because I've never actually consciously thought about this.
Mm.
But you're making me think, like, what do I actually do? Like, how do I actually move? And for me, I think I've always tried to develop a persona or to make it part of who I am. So it's like, how do you know when you're disciplined enough? Like, just ask yourself that question. So put it in the chat. How do you actually know when you're disciplined enough? So when is enough enough, Bobby? So if you're trying to discipline, like let's say you're trying to get on a diet, you're trying to not eat carbs or something like that. Like, how do you know when you're disciplined enough? You know what I mean? Like, for me, I know I've arrived at that point when I no longer have to think about it. For example, working out. I don't have to think about working out. I don't have to think about getting up and working out. It's just who I am. So systems, yes, but not everybody's a systems thinker. So for the people who are not a systems thinker, I would say to yourself, like, and Bradley, so Bradley put in the chat, it becomes habit. I'm gonna go one step further, Bradley. So they say that it takes like 14 days to establish a new habit, like 14 or 21 days to establish a new habit. What I'm talking about is not a habit. What I'm talking about is an identity. That's what I'm talking about. Like working out is who we are. It's not what I do. You can do something like when you're trying to develop discipline, you're doing stuff. Like you're working out, you're eating healthy. Like you're actually trying consciously to do it. But when it becomes who you are, there's no difference. So you can't distinguish the dance from the dancer. The dancer becomes the dance and the dance becomes the dancer. It's that sort of flow, that flow state where you no longer have to think about the thing. You're right, you just become the thing. Like people say, I'm a coach. Why are you not coaching? If you're a coach, then you should be coaching. Now you could be trying to coach. Okay, you may be trying to perform the act of coaching, but you may not have the identity of a coach. And that's what I'm talking about. You may be trying to speak, you may be trying to perform or trying to go live, but that's not your identity. Going live is not who you are. What I think is more useful is instead of people trying to do stuff, like just doing stuff, yeah, do stuff, but do it to a point where it becomes part of who you are, so you no longer have to think about it. And that's what I'm talking about. Like for me, that has always worked. I've always tried to bring myself to that point where I no longer have to consciously think about the thing that I'm thinking about right now. Like even doing this, for example, I don't have to think about breakfast with a brand. I just get up and I just do it. Before I had to think about it, like, okay, should we go live? Should we not? But now I just do it. It's just part of who we are. And they said, Bradley, it takes like 40 to 21 days to develop a new habit. I'll say it takes 100 days to develop a new identity. So after 100 days of doing something, it can become who you are. And I believe that's the point most people should try to get to. And that's what I'm doing for myself.
You know, before we go to the break, Junior, I'd like to highlight one word. One word. Focus. Focus. You know, if you're going to be disciplined, you got to have some focus. And I'll end it with this. The military, Marine Corps specifically, our boot camp is 12 weeks. 12 weeks is roughly 90 days. 90 days. And in those 90 days, we are under extreme scrutiny with extreme focus and a very, very regimented routine. And that's why we become Marines. We're not acting, we're not dancing, like we are through and through like hot-blooded Marines. And that's because of the process. So thank you for that, Junior. Very, very insightful.
Definitely. Guys, we're going to go to a quick break. When we come back, more on the 4D framework. Stay tuned.
I said Shaan Ride East. I'm proud. I said Shaan Ride East. Leadership is not the brand they made for us.
Listen, he brought fire and heat. He didn't hold back.
20 years down the line, what I could sell, why not serve first? Service over salary. Branding like a leader closes the gap for people who want branding. Speaking like a leader closes the gap for people who are nervous about speaking. If Steve Jobs would have speculated, we wouldn't have Apple.
He changed lives. He helped people open up their business and start their business.
We are the brand. Some people say, Shaan, should I quit my job? Mentally, yes.
As a speaker too, to be able to learn from him and watch him and you know, game respects game. And I want to have that much game someday.
The right client, pay $500,000 for what you do. You have to be bold in your beliefs.
He has been an amazing asset to this event and a pleasure to work with. Very captivating, collaborative, worked very well with the audience.
I want to help you. Put a 0 behind your number, right?
The session was great. How he is online, virtually, he is even more phenomenal in person.
Be the face of change that you want to see. Stop asking questions and start giving demands.
The entire team has just been absolutely incredible. They are a joy to work with. They go above and beyond.
Give yourself a round of applause. Yes, yes, yes.
Yes, guys, we are back. If you've enjoyed the show so far, do me a favor and put some flames in the chat. By the way, so this show is 100% free. We have literally zero ask. The only thing we do ask, like if we did have an ask, it would be to literally just share this with like one other person that you think would benefit. I'm not saying 10, I'm not saying 20. If you share with 20, that's fine, but just share with one. Like that's my only ask. If you find value from the show, just share with like one other person that you think would find value as well. All right, Bobby. So which one are we on? I think what have we covered? We've covered discipline, right? So
Yes.
we should be on the third one, if I'm not mistaken.
That's right. Development. And this, I think, this one I think is the hardest for many entrepreneurs. The hardest of all the other ones, because it's time. It just takes time, you know. So you'll decide. I think a lot of people decide, but they decide one thing one week and one thing the next week. So it's not a real decision. It's like they're deciding every week. So it's not a real decision. But most people can decide, right? Some people can discipline themselves. Some people can say, okay, I'm going to do this for this amount of days. And then once they're done disciplining themselves for that amount of days, then they're back to their old ways. They're back to who they were. I think that's why Junior said there's a difference between habit and identity, because anybody can, do something for a set period of time and still not change their identity and go back to who they were. And the development piece, that's where the transformation happens. The transformation is in the development. So the seed, much like a tree, the seed goes down into the ground. You decided to plant a tree. So the decision to put the seed in the ground. And then you've disciplined yourself to water the seed and to put it where it's going to get enough sunlight. And you made sure that you fertilize the ground, right? So you disciplined yourself to water and make sure it gets its sunlight and do what you got to do daily. And now you just got to wait. You just got to wait. And when you're waiting aggressively because you still have to be disciplined. You can't wait and stop doing what you were doing. You can't wait for it to develop and change your decision. Like, that's not development. Development says, I made a decision, I made investments, I set out tasks, and I've disciplined myself to do them, and I'm going to do them regardless of what I see until I have developed my end result. Now, what I think was really tricky for me as I was going through this process was, I've got kids and a wife and bills, and many of you do too. And there is a very interesting thing that happens to a provider, be it male, female, husband, wife, or joint. Like, there's something very interesting that happens when you've made large investments. You've invested a lot of time, a lot of energy, and you don't see any results. Something interesting happens to that person. What happens normally is they're like, this isn't gonna work. Man, I wasted all this money and 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 they just start getting discouraged. And that's very common because they've got real bills today and they've spent real money yesterday and have no tangible results. So now they start to abandon the development. They just let it go. And what ends up happening is they start back over at square one. I think it's Alex Hermosi who says, you can do anything, just pick one. He has this whole little cycle that he's drawn on this whiteboard before for people that follow him. And he's like, there's this stage in every entrepreneur's life where they're super excited. And then they get to this stage where they realize that there's more work involved than they ever imagined. And then they get to this point of despair where they are realizing that there's a lot to learn. And they're just learning. And they're just like, oh my gosh, is this ever going to work? And then they explode because they've learned so much, they've disciplined themselves so much, and they know so much about the industry that everybody else that's trying to come in, they're 10 times better than, so to speak. And they just are developed at that point. So now the same opportunities that they missed a year ago, 2 years ago, are opportunities that they're knocking out of the park now subconsciously, while also crushing the big goals. So I say that to say this. The hardest part for me, and the reason I'm using myself as an example is so that you can put yourself in my shoes. Like, I don't want you to think I'm telling you what to do, because there's a million ways to build a business. But with the 4D framework, this is what works for my personality type. And I'm a DC, meaning I'm a aggressive executor with a calculated approach to taking action. But that's my approach. So for me, one of the toughest things was breaking the emotional connection to old behavior. So what I mean by that is anytime you have a habit or you have a behavior, it's usually connected to an emotion. And that emotion can cloud our judgment. It can overtake our activity. It can drive our minds into directions that we don't want to go. So the development piece that was toughest for me was saying, my body is telling me this, but I know, like, my mind is telling me this. My emotions are screaming this, but my logic is telling me this. And staying disciplined and holding on long enough to logic for my behavior and emotional behavioral connections to adjust, and my body to now say, okay, this is safe. Investing large amounts is okay. Not seeing results right away is normal. You're going to be okay. And after that development took place, it was game over for my brand. So I'm interested to see what Junior's experience was like with really letting things develop, because he's talked a lot about having an aggressive patience, or I think that's what he calls it.
Yeah, I call it aggressive patience, Bobby. But I would say one of the major things, and this might not be what people think. So one of the major things that has worked for me, or that has really helped me, is actually history. And let me explain what I mean. So it said if you go far back in history, if you go far enough in history, then you can predict the future. So for example, every industry, every brand, every salesperson goes through a similar or the same cycle. So I use the example of sales. When I started doing sales, I went through the same cycle that all salespeople go through, which is you start to generate results. You get absolutely phenomenal results. So like Bobby, you might be closing several deals here, left, right, center. But after like 4 months, 6 months, if you're not careful, you could find yourself in a slump and you don't understand what to do. Now, when you're in the thing, meaning that you're in the moment or you're in the bottle, you can't see outside the bottle. You can't see into the future, right? And you don't know what's coming. You don't know what's happening. And then you're going through the emotions. So you spoke about the emotions. You're going through the emotions of being in that moment, being in that space, being in that zone, or being in that area on the roller coaster or in that cycle. That changed for me being able to, I guess, emotionally detach from current events, current situations, when I understood that if I look far back enough in history, then I can predict the future. So what do I mean? I started to realize that most of what we're going through is statistics. So in other words, I know statistically, if I make 50 calls, statistically, I'm not gonna get any results. I know if I make 100 calls, statistically, I'm gonna like almost guaranteed to book an appointment. So I started to gain the superpower of prediction. And I feel like prediction is what really separates a professional from an amateur. When you could correctly predict and understand where you are, then you know how to navigate the motions. And then you're not as emotionally entwined with whatever it is that you're doing, whether that's building a brand, whether that's setting up a CRM, whether that is doing a sales meeting, whatever it is, whether you're diving into sales, whatever that thing is for you, if you don't have the power of prediction, you can quickly get like a boat going down a long and turbulent river, and you don't know what's on the other end of that river. You don't know if there's a waterfall, you don't know if it's the ocean, you have no idea what it is.
Yeah.
So for me, what I started to do was I started to say to myself, like, who has gone before me? Who has gone this path before me? And what was some of the pitfalls? What were some of the things that they experienced? And I was able to make a relation or to strike a balance or to see myself in their experience and to leverage their wisdom and say to myself, okay, I'm at this point on the journey. That means I could expect this to happen or something similar. And when that happens, this is how I react. This is how I move. This is what I do. Now, for me, development is just a fancy way of saying correcting errors or chipping away at something until you get to whatever it is that you want. That could be perfection. So, Bobby, when you're in it, you can't see it.
Mm-hmm.
But being able to step outside of it. So, for example, there's a brilliant guy. You might know his name. He paints pictures. I think he's somebody put it in the chat. What's the guy? He used to be on TV and he used to paint the pictures. I think Bob Ross. How many of you know Bob Ross? Put a number one if you know Bob Ross. You know Bob Ross is, Bobby?
I don't.
Bob Ross was this guy. He used to paint on like television and stuff. He would have this amazing paintings. He would draw it from scratch. But just the thing, when he started, Bobby, it looked like he was just like doing a mess on the paper. Like he was just doing some like splashing paint here, splashing paint there, doing some random stuff. Okay. And then through the process of development, he developed his art into stunning pictures. Now, if you don't know what Bob Ross is doing, in the process, like while he's painting, it looks as if, like, what is this guy doing? He's just, doing random lines. He's putting too much paint here. I remember looking at one episode of Bob Ross. I'm like, what is this guy doing? He's putting too much paint over here. He should put more blue at the bottom. of course, I don't know anything about painting, and I'm thinking to myself, like, why is he putting too much paint here, right? He should put more green hair, more blue hair, more yellow hair. Nah, that's not right. But then as he went on to develop his painting or his art into stunning pictures. So Tia put it in.
Yeah.
Okay, so
I
yeah,
actually do know
no,
who that
bro.
guy is now.
There you go. So it's the same thing in business. Now, if you being somebody who's not like you're an amateur painter, which I am, I don't paint professionally. I'm looking at it and I'm asking myself, like, why is he doing that?
Mhm.
But if I am experienced and if I understand what he's doing, if I understand his cycle, if I understand his process and where he is in his process, I could clearly see where he's going. And
Mhm.
you could have the power of prediction and not, get so emotionally entwined in something that you become lost. And it's the same thing for your business.
Yeah.
There's certain things called the valleys of death in business. So the valleys of death are series of steps or stages that an entrepreneur goes through on the development journey. So for example, 0 figures to 5 figures. There are certain challenges that every entrepreneur goes through. 5 figures to 6 figures, there are certain challenges that every entrepreneur goes through. To go from 6 to 7, you're going to need to overcome the same challenges that thousands of entrepreneurs went through. And to go from 7 to 8, literally is the same process. You're unique, but you're not as different as you think. Every entrepreneur that came before you has went through the same set of hurdles that you have to overcome. The difference is you don't know. You don't know. So because you don't know what you don't know, it feels to you like you're going through hell. When in actuality, you're exactly where you need to be, right place, right time. And you just have to stick with it, like Bobby was saying, in order to go to the next level. So for me, I started to develop once I studied history and I acquired the superpower of prediction. So everybody write that down. Write down prediction. If you want to develop, you need to be able to predict what's going to happen. If you step into the gym, I can predict that somebody new going to the gym after 2 weeks, after 1 week, they're already looking for ways to back out. I can predict because statistically, most people who register for gym memberships in January, they drop out by mid-February. I can predict that. That is statistical. So me knowing that, what do? I put things in place so in February I don't drop out.
Yeah.
Like that's the power of prediction, and that's how you develop. Well, that's what I do.
Sheesh. That was powerful, Junior. I love it. I love it. Especially the analogies, man. The analogies for that particular breakdown were so great with the painting because I think everybody can resonate with that. Everybody can resonate with. So for me, it's music. So I was an artist, but not the painting type, but an actual musician. And when you are listening to something in the studio or you're building something, like I don't know how many of you all have ever like been in music, but it's like when you're listening to the drums and it's just the drums and nothing else, it seems very odd, very strange. And then you add in the piano, and now you have melody and compression. And then you add in maybe the horns, and now you've got body. And then you add in the bass, and now you've got rhythm. So you've got rhythm now, you've got melody, you've got percussion, and you've got body. And then you add in the vocals. And as you add in the vocals, like all of this is a series of developments. It's adding to the bass. And as you add to the bass and you just put things in the right places, it all sounds like music. And I think that's what's so impactful about the example that you shared. It's like you got green here, blue there, orange here, spots there. But it's like the more you let that thing develop, the more you work with it and allow it to do what it does, the more it looks like art, much like music. The more you add and the more you just let it do what it does, the more it sounds like music. So as we get ready for our last break, are we going to do one more break before we get out of here, Junior, or are we going to finish out?
Yeah, let's do one more quick break. Guys, we'll be right back. Literally stay tuned, like literally 1 minute. We'll be right back. Stay tuned. This is Breakfast with the Brand. Let's go.
When I think of brand you, I think of being your best self, your most authentic. The reason why we were able to crush business, absolutely dominate in business without having the marketing list, without having the email huge list, without having the Facebook ads and the advertising budget, without knowing the algorithm. The reason we were able to do this is because I branded myself. I told my authentic story and I was comfortable in my skin. Why? Because it was that time in the world where everything was shifting. It was 2020, March. So you remember what happened during that time. It was like the world was coming to an end. So you didn't have anything to hold back. So I chose to give everything that I had and be everything that I am. And because I was that, because I branded me, because I was authentic, everything shifted. And people wanted more. And they wanted to know more about me and how they could become more comfortable in their skin. Listen, guys, when you brand you and not what you do, you're going to add a zero to the world, but you'll also add a zero to your revenue. Let's grow. So when you're young, mommy tells you to play nice. Play nice, Timmy. Let all of the other kids play too. But in business, it's not about playing nice. In business, it's about winning. It's about adding multiple zeros to your revenue. Now, of course, your staff wins. And when you win, other people win. However, when it comes to competition, you absolutely must dominate. You can't play for participation, and you can't play just to get along or just to get by, because business is serious. Business will help you to change the world, or the world will change you. Your people will either win or your people will lose based on your level of leadership, what you're willing to do, what you're willing to sacrifice, and how much you know about dominating.
All right, guys, so we are back. We're about to wrap up the show. But Bobby, talk to me, man. Let's touch on dominate quickly before we drop out, man. Tell me.
Yes. So for me, in one word, domination is state management. State management. So we talked about identity. And when you build a certain identity within yourself, when it comes to business, you establish a certain identity in the marketplace. And that identity has a lot to do with how well you dominate in your vertical. So for example, when you make a decision to say to be the best marketer in, I don't know, cars and Teslas, the best Tesla marketer out there, right? Now, let's say that's your decision. You then discipline yourself to learn everything about Tesla cars that you can, and everything about Tesla's ideal customer that you can, and everything about the marketing world, from copywriting to systems. You learn everything you can. You discipline yourself to learning that. And then you take the time to develop. Let's say you are extremely dedicated. You gave 5 to 10 years of your life to this because you decided 10 years ago that this is who you were going to be, what you were going to do, and where you wanted to plant your flag in the marketplace. And then you get to domination. And once you get to domination, I think domination primarily is state management, meaning you have done it so much for so long from so many different angles that you operate at an elevated state of consciousness, awareness, and effectiveness. An elevated state of consciousness, awareness, and effectiveness. So when you're in a state of domination, you can think about people like Michael Jordan or Kobe Bryant, Muhammad Ali. So these guys are aware of, so Michael Jordan is aware of everybody on the court. He is conscious of his body, the ball, but he's subconsciously conscious. Like he's not thinking about it. Like Junior said, he's been so disciplined for so long, he doesn't think. He just goes. So now he's in this state of don't think. And then it's the awareness that he has of his terrain, of everything that's going on around him, of the actual dynamic in which he operates, which is the game of basketball. Then he's conscious of everything going around him, which is also incredible. And then he's effective. And he's effective because his state management is off the charts, meaning he doesn't have state slip, is what I call it. And state slip is when you're in between discipline and development, but you haven't yet reached domination. State slip says, I'm in this state and frame of mind for 3 months and then I relapse because you haven't gotten to state shift yet. You haven't gotten to full identity transformation. Or you'll be going 90 days, and then you'll fall off, but you'll come back. And that's why it takes 5 years, 10 years, because it's going to be a series of that, of getting nice, good streaks going and then life happening till you do it so much that these streaks become identity, and this identity is unchanging. So that's how you know you've reached domination, when you no longer shift back to lower states of being.
Yeah, Bobby, I know we have like literally 1 minute, so I'm just gonna sum it up in one word. So for me, domination is flow. So everything you mentioned there is literally just getting into a state of complete and utter flow where you know literally everything. So you're tapping into to me, a different kind of intelligence, right? Just a different kind of intelligence where you're super aware of literally everything around you, where you can think, where time appears to move slow, like in the Matrix, when Neo is dodging the bullet, time sort of slows down for you and you get into that state. I think Tim Grover has it in his book where he says that most high performers, time sort of slows down for them, whether that's Lionel Messi, whether that's Michael Jordan, whatever sport they're in, whatever discipline they're in, and they get into the state of flow where they sort of sit outside the matrix, if that makes sense. And once you get into that state, it's all about managing that state, remaining in that state, and then executing in that state. All right, guys. So thank you so much. If you enjoyed this, then we're gonna be back tomorrow, 8 a.m. East. Breakfast with the Brand. This has been absolutely amazing. Bobby, before we log off, is there anything you want to say to the audience?
Not at this time. Have a phenomenal Friday, guys.
All right, let's grow.
Let's grow.